Hey, welcome everybody. In this video, we're going to talk about the pyramids at Giza, but not just the pyramids at Giza, because while everybody likes to focus on what's going on with the pyramids at Giza, the fact of the matter is the pyramids at Giza exist because of the entire structure created in what we know as the Nile Delta. And so we're going to look at the Nile Delta as a larger part of the structure that begins with the pyramids at Giza. Now, a couple of months ago, I did a video on the Sphinx. And the truth is that the structure at the pyramids of Giza begin with the Sphinx, which starts this cold plasma effect, which was the purpose of the Sphinx itself, was to create through electrolysis the separation of oxygen and hydrogen. And the separation of oxygen and hydrogen then get flowed into the pyramids, which then, operated like a functioning machine to create what we'll find in this video was a large agricultural structure across the entire Egyptian delta.
Saw this book on the shelf, 5/5/2006, in the alternate history sort of area. I checked it out. I was just looking at the pictures and the drawings, and I came across Edward Kunkel's pictures, and he had said it was used as some sort of pump. And so I reproduced that same model back in June of 1999. April 3rd, 2000, first try, it ran. Pushed the valve in once and it started running. Immediately what happened, the whole 500-pound block of cement and rock and rebar was pulsing, like boom, 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 boom. And the first thing that came to mind was exactly what Chris Dunn had written, that there was a pulse that was emanating from that room, but he knew the mechanism was in there. Immediately I knew, oh my God, Chris, you're right. I added a model with a glass top and a glass side. And I used little ink jets, but I had little nozzles and valves on the side of it so I could determine all the fluid dynamics within the room. And I was absolutely shocked to find that it was a vortex in there. It was an extremely complex vortex. It had a heartbeat pulse at the time. And if you set it up a certain way, it actually does the pulse of a heart. It doesn't do a consistent, like 1 second per se. 1 second pulse is bump, bump, bump. It was actually doing strong in a short beat. Bump, 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 bump. Whatever it is, whoever designed this, that's what they wanted. And Chris was saying, I had just come up with the name of a book, and it had to do with the Great Pyramid, the heartbeat of a civilization.
I think the evidence is fairly clear that, particularly in Egypt, and if you consider the system that they built at Giza, the pyramids at Giza, the Great Pyramid specifically, that they had developed an energy system that was harmonious. It was not only drawing energy from the earth, but it was harmonizing the plates and harmonizing the earth and probably transmitting those frequencies throughout the planet. It's now become knowledge that these standing stones, like at Stonehenge, at Karnak, that they actually do emit particular frequencies.
Now, when we call it the Nile Delta, we should take that quite literally, that it is a delta, as in a triangle. And to get there, we need to turn the entire map upside down so that we are looking at the delta of the Nile in its proper context. Now, anytime you look at a delta Y across the planet, you're always going to have a primary node to the delta. And that primary node is the Great Pyramid structure. It is the Great Pyramid, which itself, as you may know, I'm sure, has on it 8 delta structures. There are 8 triangles. Now, this is just the beginning of the entire structure, but the reason that the pyramids are laid out in a Fibonacci sequence is because their purpose is to draw the electromagnetic connection with the sun directly onto the site. And by doing that, they reestablish the natural delta Y that was created during the apocalypse. And that delta Y that forms over the delta of the Nile was done to increase the agricultural output of the Nile region, of the Nile Delta region. Now, this is the exact same thesis that I presented in my Rapa Nui video. And we can, you can go back and you can take a look and watch my series on that and get a sense of why the delta was created. But one of the important parts of the entire structure at Rapa Nui was its access to a freshwater system, that the fresh water connected to the salt water. There are several people who have suggested that there are large canals and piping underneath the structures at the Great Pyramid.
So this is pretty much breaking news because the new findings were announced on the 16th of March at a press conference held by the team who was studying the Great Pyramid of Giza with a non-invasive technology that was first developed by Filippo Bionde and Corrado Malanga, called synthetic aperture radar Doppler tomography. So this was used to explore the internal structure of the Great Pyramid of Giza. And this method leverages the analysis of micro movements typically generated by background seismic activity to achieve a high resolution, full 3D tomographic imagery of the pyramid's interior and subsurface components. The recent findings from deploying this technology are nothing short of mind-blowing, because what's been discovered is that there are huge structures coming down from the base of the pyramid deep into the bedrock, in fact over 600 meters deep, which then connects to structures that extend up to 2 kilometers below the surface of the ground. 2 kilometers. Massive internal structures connected to the base of the pyramid and extending deep, deep down. This is what we know so far.
The northern junction of the delta is created by this Fibonacci sequence around the pyramids, as I said earlier, to draw down the electrical current from the sun like an electrical, plug. This is where they plugged in the system with the sun. By doing that, it created 2 additional junctions. Now, the first junction is actually quite surprising and not quite surprising because the lower right junction aligns perfectly with where the Nile exits into the Mediterranean. Now, if there was a structure there at one point, and there probably was, we found a city below the water right off this juncture here. The purpose of this segment of the junction was as a foothold for the Delta Y. And interestingly enough, and you're going to love this, when you go to the junction on the western side of the Delta Y, the Suez Canal now exits into the Mediterranean at the most perfect and exact point that it's supposed to. Now, these 3 points in the delta, these 3 distinct junctions in the circuit, represent the grounding, the ground of the entire established delta. From here, it draws electrons at a greater rate into the structure of the Nile Delta. And by doing so, it creates a greater effect on not only the crops and the livestock, but it improved the health of the people who lived there because they had a much greater regular exposure to the electron flow from the core of the earth. This is exactly what the mythology at Rapa Nui says, right? It says that King Hotumatua built the Moai in order to improve crop growth and the livestock growth on the island, which if it's going to improve the crops and it's going to improve the livestock, it clearly would have an improved benefit on the health of the people who live there. Now, when we lay the delta Y over the full region, we find that these additional 4 nodes of the Y come at some very specific locations. The first location, and this one just stunned me when I found it, has to do with this upper right nodule. Notice that you've got this, once again, triangular delta to the north. Now note you've got this giant triangular delta with the city of Philume in the middle of it. And note once again that this entire area is green while it's surrounded by desert. But if you look at the far west location of this delta itself, a secondary delta, and in the far east side you find this perfect conical circular mound. This mound represents the junction of the Y in the circuit right here. This mound exists because it is this juncture in the delta Y circuit. Now, if that isn't crazy enough for you, the second juncture comes down here in the southwest corner, and it divides this water to the right and water to the left. This area, specifically in the middle of land, is the secondary junction of this delta Y circuit. And I can't even believe that I'm showing you this, to be honest. The third junction of this, and by golly, the Egyptians have begun building a structure here. And wouldn't you know, it's a government structure. And not only is it a government structure, but right in the middle of the structure, they're building the Ministry of Defense. I can't make this up. And it's a circle, because that's where the junction in the circuit goes. And so these are the parts of the circuit itself, with the exception of one that I've not talked about, which is in the lower left-hand corner. Now, I am going to bet we're going to find that they've either found something there, or if they haven't, I'm going to predict that someday they do. Because this region was established as an area of agriculture for the Egyptian empire that came to be after the apocalypse. An empire, a kingdom that took advantage of the delta Y circuit created in the apocalypse. Nobody's research touches Dr. Stinky McDougal's lab. Don't forget to click that like, share, and subscribe button. Leave me a comment down below, and peace out, everyone.
Well, that was a real banger.
Oh, yeah, no, it's another solid analysis. Yeah, thank you. I appreciate that.